All right, guys, welcome to the Clack Shack. And tonight I'm going to be doing a little bit of instructional on how to build a jig using my new interchangeable jig setup, and just going to kind of demonstrate how I build jigs and how I make them work, and how I ensure that I can take that jig, whatever it's made for, drop it in and hit burn, and it'll burn right every time. So I'm just going to kind of demonstrate how to set that up and then how to use it. And I'm going to be using pencils for that demonstration, because I felt like in order to make this believable for some folks, it needed to be really small and really accurate. And so a pencil was about the smallest thing I could think of that people may be trying to engrave or etch on. And once we get that template built for the pencil, I'm going to attempt to engrave my pencil for my iPad Pro. This is a new Apple pencil. It's about 125 bucks, so it's gonna be a bit of a cliffhanger. So stick around. All right, guys. Since I did my video about my jig and my universal jig holder there, I've had a few people that apparently didn't know exactly how to use a jig, didn't understand what the purpose of it was. So I decided to make a quick video just kind of explaining the process that I use to make jigs and create a way of replicating a burn. You can use a jig for anything that you're gonna be engraving where you have multiple pieces, whether it be anything from tile to coins to, anything that is a consistent shape, and you're going to be doing multiples of that thing. And for tonight's demonstration, I'm going to be using blank pencils. This is just a cheap little, all it has on it is got HB number 2 printed on it, but the rest of the pencil is completely blank. And so what I'm going to do, just as a demonstration, is I am going to create a jig for this pencil and explain you step by step how I go about doing that. And then I'm going to show you how it works and show you how it can and make it to where if you engrave a pencil today and then you engrave another pencil next week, you can get the same results without a whole lot of prep and a whole lot of setup time. So stick around for a few minutes and we're going to get started. All right, the first thing to this is you got to know two things. You got to know how big the jig needs to be. So you're going to need some measuring equipment. This is a little cheap Walmart caliber that I bought that registers in millimeters. And this is just your standard Walmart also millimeter metric ruler. So those are the two things that I'm going to be using for this. And so what I want to do first is determine how wide does my jig need to be to hold this pencil. And the way that I'm wanting to engrave these is I want to put this HB2 part, either have it up or have it down, but I want the flat part right there to be up and down. So I'm going to need to make my jig to where this pencil, with it laying flat, like let's say on here, with that pencil laying flat, I want it to fit in my jig. So that measurement there is 7.4 millimeters. So that's I think that's what I'm going to try to start with, is just to go with the bare minimum because of the way this thing is shaped. So I'm going to make my jig 7.4 millimeters tall, and then we're going to go with the overall length of what it is that we're trying to jig. And so I'm going to put this little guy just inside the zero. I don't want it on the zero, I want it just inside the zero because this has to lay inside that crack. And this is going to be 191, I guess. 192. We'll go with 192. What's 1 millimeter going to matter? So we'll go, what was it, 7.4 and 192. I am terrible with my short-term memory, guys. That's why I usually write things down when I'm working by myself. But I'm pretty sure this was 7.4. Yeah, we're going to call that 7.5 by 192. So now what I'm going to do in Lightburn, I'm going to create a box, and I'm going to go up here. I'm going to disengage the lock. If it's locked, I'm going to set my width for 192 millimeters, and I'm going to set my height to 7.5, and that's going to give me just a square cut basically. All right, and then once we got that done, I'm going to assign that a cut speed, which I've already got preset in my machine, so that's no hard task. We just simply click on the red one because I use red for cuts. All right, I'm going to turn everything on and make it a little bit noisy. The one advantage that I do have that some of you may not have for this particular step is that I'm going to use my camera to take a screen capture of my workspace and try to position my cut exactly where I want it, but then I'm going to frame just to make sure it goes where I want it to go. So I'm going to go ahead and take a screenshot here, update my overlay. I've got it, I see it on my screen, and it's showing me where the line's going to go. I want to move this thing up just a little bit because this is kind of going to be my multi-purpose jig that I've got laying here. I'm going to do several different things on it, so I'm just trying to maybe spare a little real estate. I'm going to, before I do anything, I'm going to go ahead and rehome my machine. The one thing that I will tell you, when using jigs, it is very important that you start from the same place and that your graphic be in the same place. The objective of a jig is that in your burn, your design knows exactly where in this workspace it's supposed to put whatever you're putting there, whether it be a cut, a burn, or whatnot. So if you don't start at zero, or if you don't do everything the same way every single time, it's not going to work. So I've homed my machine. So now I'm going to frame and get it to show me where it's going to put my pencil. So that is a little spider there on my laser. Get away, guy. But there is where it's going to go. I've got plenty of room. I'm away from everything. I wouldn't mind it being a little higher, but I don't want to get so high as to cause my laser to bottom out. So I'm just going to bump it up just a little bit. And let's see if it'll frame there without hitting the wall. There we go. All right, so I've got my frame set. I'm at 192 by 7.5. I've got my burn speed set. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to burn that little jig. I'm going to burn that out so that we can use it. And I'm going to have to cut my table on, and it will get loud because if I don't, smoke is going to overcome us here. So bear with me for a moment while I get rid of some smoke. All right, that should be that on that little piece. So I'm gonna pop my jig out and get that little piece of wood out of there. You guys in there tight. Got a little knot back there holding. There we go. All right, so I got the hole cut for the pencil. Let's see if we were successful in our measuring adventure here. All right, so the pencil does fit inside the jig. So that's what we wanted. And luckily I got it just the right size. It's technically, the pencil is a little snug. So that's gonna work out well. So I'm gonna put the jig back into the machine. We'll press my pencil because, like I said, I want this on the flat side of this pencil. I want my graphic to be, well, let me flip this pencil around because I want it to run this little flat ledge right here. I want it to basically match in with that. So I'm going to flip my pencil around, get it in there nice and snug. Turns out the little metal piece is what's causing it to be snug, which that was an oversight on my part, but it worked out good. So. All right, now I'm going back to my screen. And what I'm gonna do for this jig, the secret to doing a jig like this is that I am fixing to create a burn file. I'm creating it with this one graphic or this one logo or this one whatever, and I'm gonna save that. I will not open this file and edit it, move it, do anything to it, because it is going to be basically married to this jig right here. So I'm always going to have to use this particular slot, this particular jig with this particular burn file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a line of text and I'm going to put, you guessed it, the Clack Shack on this pencil. So I'm going to reduce the font size, of course, pretty significantly because my pencil's kind of small. All right, not only is my pencil small, but I want the text to be on this flat ledge right here, which is probably less than 5 millimeters if I were guessing. Well, I know it's less than 5 millimeters. It's probably 3 millimeters across right there. So my text is going to have to be very small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type the text in there and assign it a size. All right, now I've got the text lined up using the boxes that I used to cut the hole for the pencil. So what I recommend, especially when you're trying to work the bugs out of these jigs, before I run this engrave, I am going to cut, not delete, but I'm going to cut my cut line out of the image file. If I do this test and it doesn't work the way I want it to, I can use the undo button to put that right back where it was and start over aligning my text and making my changes there. That way I don't have to let the machine run. I mean, you could turn the power down and just have it set at like 2% power at 150 millimeters per second or whatever. You could do all those things if you wanted. I don't want to do that because when I start using this jig, I want it to run over there, burn the letters, and get back. Run over there, burn the letters, and get back. And another thing that you'll notice about my jig is I use X1, Y1 as my return to home position after a burn. My jig just barely misses my laser head when it's at X1, Y1, and that was intentional because when I'm doing jigs like this, that's what where I have my laser to go, and I don't want to be messing with it. So I'm going to take and I'm going to select the cut line that we use to make the jig, and I'm just going to hit cut. I'm not touching nothing else. I just cut that line and removed it from the graphic so that it doesn't get burned. And if I mess up, I can always use the undo button to drop that thing back in there. So I'm going to hit go on this, and we're going to burn some text to that pen, to that pencil, and see how it looks. Now I kind of put this near the end of the frame so y'all can see where it's going to frame. Okay, there was our frame. Wow, that's a really small frame, guys. But here we go. Let's see how big this text is. We may have to go a little bigger with the font, may not. We'll see. I'm going to try to leave the vacuum table off for this bird if I can. Surely this little bit of etching on this pencil is not going to generate enough smoke to be a problem. So, it does have a distinct smell, I'll tell you that though. My power settings on this, somebody's going to ask, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you. I've got it running at 40 speed and 100% power. I'm thinking with it being wood, it is a pencil, it's wood. Pencils range in the type of wood from what I've been told, but 40 millimeters per second at 100% power, no matter what kind of wood it is, I should get a good legible burn out of that, especially with it being a painted surface. So we'll see what it looks like here shortly and see if the jig and if my jig theory actually works, and so we can verify it. And for the record, guys, this is actually my first pencil engraving I've ever done. I've never done one of these before. Like I said, because before, trying to get everything lined up and squared and get it where it needed to be, it was a challenge. But now that I have my jigs, let's see how that turned out. Okay, I will tell you this, it's not gonna fall out of there. All right, there we go, guys. There we go. That is the Clack Shack pencil now. And I will say I did a pretty good job of getting that text lined up. But I also will say that it could stand to go up maybe one or two on the font size. I could stand to go a little bigger with that. So we're gonna do a couple of things. I want to show you that this works by redoing it, but not only are we going to redo it, I'm going to pull the jig out, put it back, change the font, put the pencil back in there, and we're going to burn it again. Like I said, my jig's a little tighter than what yours will be because I put screws in it, but I've got the jig completely out of the machine now. Pencil rests in here. I'm going to snap the jig back into the holder, making sure that it's clamped all the way across. I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to turn it around to the other side. So I'm going to put this side down this time. That way we can do it on the opposite side of that engraving. All right, pencil is in there. Just to make sure I line my text up properly, I'm going to hit the undo button, which is going to put my my box back in there. I'm having to undo some text too, but I'm going to undo it. Now my box is back in there. The original box that I used to cut the pencil shape out is back. So now I can actually see where my lettering needs to be. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take that font that we just did. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, and I'm going to move this. I'm going to move this text kind of middle of the pencil, I think. All right, that's about the middle there. All right, and it's at a 2.5 height now, so I'm going to try to take it up to. I think 5 is going to be too much. 2.5. 5. I think I need like a 3.5 since I don't have a 3.5. If you select up, I'm going to manually enter 3.5 as my text height. And one more thing that you can do to get this centered is select the text first. Select your text first using the arrow. Then hold Control and select the cut line. Let me re-emphasize. Select the text first, then hold Control, then select the cut line. Whichever part that you select first is the one that's going to move. You don't want the cut line to move on your jig here. You want the text to move. And then I'm going to use the center align objects horizontally. I'm going to click that. That moves my text to the perfect center of that square. So as long as my pencil's square, we should be dead center. I moved my font up to a 3.5 from a 2.5, so it should be a little bigger. I'm gonna actually leave the same settings that I had before. Now, before I hit burn, what I've got to do is I've got to get rid of my cut line. So just like I did earlier, I'm gonna hold, I'm gonna click the cut line, right click, cut. That removes my cut line. So now all I'm doing is engraving. And then I'm gonna hit start because I just feel confident it's gonna go where it's supposed to. So no framing required. We're just gonna send that baby on. Like I said, a combination of the fact that my jig, I didn't have to move my laser to take the jig out, put the jig back. The laser, when it got through the last burn, it went to X1, Y1. And so the machine knows that the laser is currently at X1, Y1 when I start the next job. It's just gonna move from there to that point in space that I told it to put that image, and it's gonna burn it. So that makes this process extremely accurate and extremely repeatable. But you know, I don't want to go bragging too much until we see how the pencil turns out. But it's pretty confident that it's going to turn out well. All right, so now there we are. It's a Clack Shack pencil, guys. All right, guys, going to try to do a 2 burn. What I'm going to attempt is I'm putting this thing in the jig. I'm pushing it all the way against the back. I'm gonna rock it, and I'm gonna make sure that it is flat with the base underneath so that I've got a nice, you know, flat spot and the pencil's not turned. I'm gonna do a quick burn to the pencil. Like I said, no framing required, just going from my return to home spot, going back over there. But I would like to say again, if you're not using X1, Y1 as your return to location after a burn, I strongly recommend it. You should do that as soon as you can. The way that you get to that, to set that, because somebody's going to ask me, is going to be edit on light burn. Go to edit and go down to device settings, and under device settings on the lower right corner of the screen, or the lower right quadrant, if you divided it into 4 quadrants, you will see return to finish position, X and Y. And I have X 1.0, Y 1.0. And that is what I prefer. All right, so now we got the pencil, we got her burned. Once again, looking good. The jig works great. Okay, I'm being a little hard on myself by trying to make it go back to exactly the same spot. But let's face it, guys. If it's within a 0.5 millimeter or 2, I don't know that anybody would ever notice. But some of y'all may know this. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I want things perfect. So we're going to make sure that it goes back, and we're going to test and see exactly how close to exactly in the same spot this burns on the second pass. This is the second pass on the same side of the pencil, same font, same everything. So this should be one image. If it's absolutely perfect, you should not be able to tell that this was a, you know, burn, remove, and burn. It should look like a 2-pass burn with no variations. So we're going to see exactly how precise the technique is here. What do you know, guys? That, fellas, is sheer perfection right there. That's it right there. That is why I like my jig setup. We can remove the jig, put the jig back, grab some pencils and start engraving pencils using our light burn file that is named pencil, jig, whatever. We can go right into engraving pencils. Now, before you close your jig file, this is something that I strongly recommend you to do. Before you close your jig file, make sure that the cut line is still in there before you save it and exit out of it, because if not, then you may have to cut another hole in your jig. But using my jig plans that I have, you can just cut you another whole board if you want. But if you plan on reusing these jigs, make sure your cut line is in there. That way, if somebody comes up next week and is like, hey, I want a pencil, but I want this on it, you can actually go in and change the text and still have that cut line to use to align everything, and you'll save yourself a whole bunch of work. And so you can turn these pencils out kind of quick, because you can just drop one in and go to the next one, drop one in and go to the next one. All right, now, just so that everybody knows, I have been dying to engrave my Apple Pencil for my iPad Pro. I have really, really been dying to attempt it. So, without further ado, we're fixing to try to engrave my $125 Apple Pencil. The only thing that I worry about is if you look really carefully right here, I don't know if what these two little spots are right there, is I'm not real sure what's inside this thing. So that flat area right there, I'm just not sure. It does look like somebody used a laser there. So what I'm thinking of doing, I know this jig isn't going to fit this Apple Pencil exactly right because it's made for number 2 pencils, but I'm probably not going to be engraving a lot of these, and so I think I'm just going to use this jig because I know where the font's going to go and I can center it and everything, and I'm going to try to put me the Clack Shack on my Apple Pencil. So here we go. So I'm going to place that thing in there. I can see one thing that I am going to have to do is I am going to have to definitely raise the laser up a little bit. So much for it being at home. So we're going to raise this guy up. I'm actually going to pull my focus lever over the top of the Apple Pencil, and I'm running my focus down to where it touches the Apple Pencil, because that is the surface we're going to be cutting, and I'm putting her back. So I'm going to try to get the flat side of this pencil on there, and now I've got a home again because I just got through messing with my laser. So I'm going to run home, let it do its thing. Got that done. So just to be sure, this is the, see, where's the last font that we did? That's the last font we did. That space that I have looks like it'll fit the Apple Pencil pretty well. So we're gonna rock with that. I'm a little afraid about the 40 power. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I don't know that plastic is gonna hold up as well as the wood did. So what I am going to do is I'm going to turn my cut power down just a little bit because I really don't want to cut a hole in my Apple Pencil. So I'm going to turn my power down to, actually I'm just going to turn my speed up. I'm going to turn my speed up to, let's say, 60. One fill. All right, so I got the speed set to 60, the power set to 100, and ain't no day like today. So let's see what this puppy does. Oh, okay, I hear that little bit of squeaking, so that's good. It's not totally digging. The pencil is white, so that may cause it not to be as dark as I thought it was going to be. So we'll see. Because I'm seeing a lot of splashback off that laser. But I'm assuming that if Apple made an Apple Pencil, They wouldn't make it out of anything that was too thin. Let's hope not, because I really wanted to buy another one. It engraved it, but it has no color. So see if I can feel the engravement. Now I think I need to go a little more power, guys. So I am going to. Whew, that's a lot. It's a pretty good bit of power. So let me just. I'm going to run that same power setting the same, because I really don't want to cut through this plastic. I don't know what's under there. It could be explosive. I don't know. Pretty sure there's a battery in there somewhere. All right, gonna run that same speed one more time. That's gonna be my final answer, because I know it's etching into the plastic, but it doesn't seem to be discoloring the plastic. So more than likely what I'll do is I'll just take this thing, wipe a little paint in there, and wipe it down really good. Let the paint set, and then kind of inlay the engraving, so that'll make it show up. I mean, I know it is engraving into the plastic, but it's white plastic, and it's not scorching it enough to discolor it. So we're gonna, and I'm not gonna put enough power to it to scorch it too bad, because I'm afraid I'll cut into there and find myself a lithium-ion battery or something. Wait a minute, we may have hit the magic number. Guys, I don't know. I am really wanting to run this one more time. All right, third time's the charm, guys. All right, so that's going to be a total of 3 passes, running 60 speed, 100% power, and this is the new version of the Apple Pencil. This is the one that is proximity charged. It doesn't have a plug or anything. So if anybody's wanting to know, that's what I'm doing here. I do not recommend you do this. If you do this and destroy your Apple Pencil, don't come hollering at me. Yeah, that's going to be our last pass, because it's starting to smut a little. So I know it's getting in there, so I'm going to go ahead and call that done. You wipe that guy off. It got a little blackness on it. Take my pencil off, my shirt off. Whew. Yeah, it's really not. It's cutting in, but it's not visible. Let me go get some paint. Be right back. All right, guys. So what I ended up doing was, apparently this material is burn resistant. It would not scorch enough for me to be able to see it. It was cutting a line in it, but it wasn't adding any color to it. So I'm gonna have to clean this up a little bit. Once it dries, I'm gonna wipe it down with a little bit of mineral spirits, because I used spray paint to do this. But that's the finished product. I don't know if y'all can see that. Let me get behind here and see. Focus. Okay, right up in your face. But there you go. So yes, you can engrave an Apple Pencil, but it will not make it dark. So you're gonna have to improvise with a little paint down in there. I use just regular, one coat spray paint, but I guess you could use any kind of, if you had any kind of acrylic paint or whatnot, you could, that would go down in the cracks, you could. But so now the good news is, if I lose my iPad Pro pencil, I can definitely tell people it's mine. So now I'm gonna make sure this thing still works. So yes, apparently it still works, guys. Pulling up notepad. Yes, the pencil still works. So we're good. I'm gonna call this a success. All right, guys, that concludes tonight's episode of how to use a jig and does the Clack Shack jig kit actually work. So that concludes tonight's video. While I was moving the camera, I went ahead and got me a little bit of mineral spirits. And for those of you that work with spray paint, mineral spirits is your best friend, because when you're doing inlayments with paint, you can use spray paint, spray it in there real good, let it set for just a few minutes, and then take a rag that is moist, not soaking, dripping wet, but moist with mineral spirits, and you can wipe that stuff right off of there. I know a lot of y'all use tempera paint for glass and mirrors and stuff like that, and I've tried the tempera paint. I cannot get a consistent burn because I can't get it painted on there consistently. I suck as a painter, so I use spray paint, and and I've got 2 gallons sitting there now. I keep mineral spirits, so when I'm doing glass, I paint it with Krylon. I put me as many coats as I want, make sure it's good and dry, hit it with a heat gun, and then I engrave the glass. And once I'm completely done with the burn, then I clean it off with mineral spirits. Yes, mineral spirits has a little bit of an odor, but you can get the low odor version. So if you don't have mineral spirits and you're working on glass and etching and engraving, I strongly recommend you get it and give it a try. But I took, while I was away, and wiped my Apple pencil with a little bit of mineral spirits, and I'm going to show you what she looks like now. So there is the Apple pencil. That was 3 passes. I'm glad I didn't go the 4th, because that's actually a really deep indention in there. And I think those 2 little pieces, those are where it snaps to the iPad. So I'm pretty sure those are probably related to the charging of it. So I tried to get it between those. But I'll take a picture of it and maybe put it on the post as well. But that's it for tonight, guys. I got some stuff I got to finish up on and I got to work on, but I hope this helps the ones of you that were asking me, hey, what's a jig? How do you use a jig? How do I make a jig? Maybe you get the idea now, and if this was helpful, or if you learned anything, like I said, please drop me a comment, hit the like, hit the subscribe. And if you're interested in one of my jigs and you didn't know it existed and maybe you just discovered it, you can check out my Etsy store. The store is under Clack Custom Creations, but you can also find a link to it on my YouTube channel at the Clack Shack. So thank you, and I hope everybody has a good day, and I'll check back with you. If you have any questions or anything you'd like to see in a video, just let me know.